One example, let's say you have a small farm and you have a few people working on that farm. And at the end of the day, you give them a meal to eat. Now, what if one day you go too far and expect them to exhaust themselves at the expense of their own health? Now, you have the leverage that you're the one feeding them. But what if behind your back, one of those employees has found another food source? He never told you about it. So normally, he would just put up with your demands, but this time he just walks away. He doesn't even care about you. He never comes back. Why? He doesn't need your supper. He has another food source. So he can choose if he wants to put up with your demands. He has a leverage. Or let's say now that you live with people who are scapegoating you, blaming you. Now, if they knew that you could move out anytime, unhindered, they would likely not scapegoat you. Why? Because if you would leave, they are left behind with their anger. The fact that they're scapegoating you and make you feel unwanted and unwelcome is because they know that you have no other place to go and know that you're secured of a dump site. There's one thing you need to realize about the psychology of fallen mankind. If they know that you can shake them off anytime, they are demotivated from escalating against you. It's when they have some type of security that you have no choice but to put up with their violence that they become lustful to escalate against you. Haven't you noticed that people tend to dislike the ones they can't control? And haven't you noticed that they only take action, they only express their hatred against people that are weaker than them or at the same level? If someone is always blunt and hurting people's feelings by saying whatever he thinks, he wouldn't dare to do that when there's a police officer who can make an arrest on him. He wouldn't dare to do that in a courthouse where he can be put in jail for contempt of court for 60 days. When there are people who can easily shake them off, or better, retaliate against them successfully, they will not escalate because they know that if they even think about escalating, it may go wrong. So that shows you one thing about fallen mankind. Fallen mankind always wants victims around that they have under their grip. And that's one of the reasons why some people want their own business. Not because they want to be economically relevant, but because they want to be able to exploit people and get away with it. I'm telling you, there are people out there who start their own business just because they want to be able to say no to people, to be harsh against people. They want to be able to dump on people without being held accountable, without people resisting them. And if you have people who depend on their job at your company for their income and for them to pay rent, then you have the perfect victim because you can't go anywhere that easily. Look well at the world and you will notice this narcissistic pattern of exploitation everywhere. Anytime anyone becomes wealthy, the public tends to resist. Why? Because when you are wealthy, you have options. Think about the first example I've used. If you have to work on a farm in exchange for food, then the farmer has a leverage over you and he can overpower you with his violence. But the moment you have another food source and he's just an option, not a necessity, he will lose that power over you. And that's how society works. If everyone could build their own money press and print their own money, then first of all, there wouldn't be any harmony in the monetary system, so that wouldn't work. But let's say now that you would have multiple money presses and that multiple people could just print money when they need it. Then you wouldn't have to go to work every day and you wouldn't have to bend over all types of demands from the government to get welfare. But if that would have happened, then most people wouldn't put up with anything from anyone. And if that happens, you would have a situation where people cannot get along and people lose interest in actually behaving themselves. And look at this. This is the weird part, but it's true nevertheless. It's because fall of mankind. It's because worldly people in general have no choice but to get along, to have a living. That means if they don't get along with society's expectations, they likely won't get a job. They likely won't get business opportunities, and people will likely ignore them. It's because of that they are motivated to behave. Because I'm telling you, even right now, with all those social restrictions, a lot of worldlings escalate and do very, very disgraceful things. Lately on Reddit, Reddit is a website or it's kind of a social media where people ask questions and others can answer them. On Reddit was this question, I believe by this woman, who said that she and her husband left their children behind to move somewhere else. And she left her sister with the custody. It was several years ago, and now one of their children was 30 years old and was still traumatized by it. And she was asking, how come my children are so traumatized by it? And I would say all the people that responded to that post were thinking, what is this? You abandon one of your children when the child is around 6 years old just because you and your husband want to be left alone and have some ease? So you are cowards who are avoiding your parental responsibility and you expect your child to just agree with it and not to be affected by it? There was no way anyone could justify that attitude of whoever posted that. Now, I hope it's fake to the post, because I hope there isn't a mother out there who actually did this. But, hey, I know better. Such things happen in the world, where people do disgraceful, inexcusable things, and they still demand the best from others. Now, if you would do that at work, and you would be fired, anytime you want to get another job, they would call your previous employer, and that will be trouble. But if you can't get a job, and you also can't get welfare, you'll likely end up homeless. So a lot of people know, I need to behave. So they become motivated to behave because of the sanctions that would follow if they don't. There are people out there who just want to beat up other people, just to express their anger. But they know if they jump from the chair and beat up someone, even if other individuals does not press charges, if it's figured out that they did this, the local prosecutor may press charges against them. So either way, when charges are pressed, they may go to prison for a few months. And they may get a record for battery. And everywhere they go, there'll be a criminal with a criminal record. And there are certain jobs they can't get anymore. And anytime they want to catch an airplane to go to another country, the host country where they go through will be informed that this passenger has a record. And that other country may even decide to deny them access. So a lot of doors come to close to them. A lot of opportunities will pass them by because they have a criminal record. So that also motivates a lot of worldlings to behave. Some people can't stand you and want to shut you up and actually attack you and all of that, but they know that if they do that, they are in trouble. So they learn how to behave around you. Look, if society's rewards and punishment would disappear tomorrow, I would dare to say that at least half of the so-called decent people would suddenly go crazy, lose their minds, and act out. And everyone would be shocked thinking, I thought he was a loyal family man who loved his wife and his children. Look at him now. He's booty chasing all over the place. And he's screaming and cussing out his children, while he used to be a man who hated cuss words. Or you may hear about a woman who used to be a loyal housewife, at least that's what you thought, and now she's spreading her legs all over the place, shamelessly. Or you may hear about someone who suddenly killed his children just because he was fed up with having to be a responsible parent. I'm telling you, I'm not a supporter of this construct called society, because society is what the Bible calls the world. It's a narcissistic construct, so I do not agree with it. But I do see the practical use of it in daily life. For people without Christ, society is the structure that keeps them in check. I'm not just talking about prison sentences and criminal records. A lot of people are terrified of being socially excluded. They're terrified of being all alone. And it's because of this human need for connection that they are motivated to behave and get along with others. If for some reason they would become reprobate and they wouldn't care anymore, you would have a lot of trouble out there. Listen, some of you are still alive because people around you knew that they would end up in prison if they killed you. Just think about that. Some of you are still alive and you're healthy because some people didn't dare to attack you or escalate against you because they knew they would lose everything they've worked for. So am I saying that society is good? No. The world, as the Bible calls it, is evil. Nevertheless, this evil structure called the world has to police itself so that at least there is some functionality in daily life. So always remember this, Saint. A lot of the people you see out there, the only reason they're so-called decent and managed is because of that. They're managed by the rewards and punishments of society. So those rewards and punishments are not good in themselves because they are a form of manipulation. They're a form of narcissistic manipulation. Manipulation in itself, there's nothing wrong with it as long as you do it for a good purpose, but the manipulation of society is rooted in black magic and witchcraft, so I don't support it, but at least it has the side benefit that it keeps people from becoming worse, at least for a moment. So anyone out there who claims they don't need Christ because they are a good citizen or they are a good member of their society, it's only because they're well managed. Look, it's due to the influence of the gospel that society itself is more humane. It's because of the influence of the gospel that child sacrifices and a lot of child prostitution is kept in line. If the gospel will disappear from many places, it will become like Sodom and Gomorrah all over again. So, as saints, we are in the world, we're not of the world. So we are in society, we're not of society. But just because we're not of society doesn't mean we're going to attack society like rabid dogs. No. Society is in place to keep worldlings in check. That's the only thing they have to preserve a little bit of safety around them. So we get along and tolerate society's expectations as long as they don't go against God's will. The moment society comes with stupid stuff that goes against God's will, we just say no and we shake it off. And in order to do that successfully, we should be economically relevant so we don't have to put up with the demands of society. With getting along, I don't mean agreeing and condoning. I simply mean we tolerate on a practical level some of society's expectations just in order to be able to get along with our fellow human beings, of which many are still unsaved. And many will remain unsafe forever because they're reprobate. But anyway, know that it's only the rewards and the punishments of society that keeps a lot of people quote-unquote decent. You would be very, very shocked. You would faint if you see how people really are. Most people will never reveal who they really are. Most people will never even want you to know who they really are. And from most people, you'll never know who they really are because they're so well managed. But the Heavenly Father sees everyone as they are. The Heavenly Father does not see the civil version of someone when they are managed by society. God sees who they actually are. That's why there are a lot of people out there whom we consider good people, but Heavenly Father does not want to be involved with them. Because Heavenly Father knows that the moment they have a leverage and they can get away with escalating, they will do it frequently in a very harmful way. But we don't see that because we see the civil version of them. And because we see the civil version that we like, we think we know them. Listen, the Heavenly Father knows exactly who people are. So, when the Heavenly Father doesn't trust someone, why would you trust them? Listen, there are people out there that God does not trust because God sees clearly what they're are willing and capable of doing once they get power. And look at this. The Heavenly Father is the owner of all power in heaven and on earth. The world only has violence, and they use this violence to gain some leverage over you. That's the only thing the world has. The world has no power, only violence. Now, God is the owner of all power, and the Heavenly Father only gives power to believers he trusts. Unbelievers are not empowered by the Heavenly Father, period. And look at this. The Heavenly Father does not empower unbelievers, first of all, because they don't look at the bigger picture, so demons can hijack them and then the power is misused. And here's another thing. Some people in the world are just that. They're just bad people. But because they know how to act very well, nobody notices how bad they are. And here's the thing. When they want power and their Father refuses to give it to them, instead of thinking, maybe it's better for me not to have power, or instead of asking, Lord, why can't you trust power to me? What's wrong with me? What do I need to change? Instead of self-reflecting and being willing to improve and become better, they become resentful. And what do? They turn to demons. And once they get, quote-unquote, dark power from the paranormal, they suddenly begin to escalate against people that don't do whatever they want. And now you see why the Heavenly Father did not want to grant them any power. That's why the only option he had left was to go to demons, who were nothing but parasitical thieves. There are people God simply does not trust. So why would you trust them? Well, that's it for now. Keep on agreeing with Christ and be at peace.